everyone, this is Neha Tulsyan from Crescent Creation. Welcome to another video on my YouTube channel. In today's video, I'm going to create 10 invites for my daughter's birthday party. And I'm also going to share some tips and tricks along the way to create cards in bulk. As the holiday season is approaching, I know a lot of us will be creating a ton of cards, and this video will help you create your cards in a more systematic way. To start, I here have a white note card. And I'm using one of my hillside border dies to do some partial die cutting on the front of my note card. I wanted my invite to look a little different than a usual card, and I also wanted to use these animals from Fawn, so I decided to have a little bit of a different opening for my card. So here I'm holding down my die using some post-it tapes, and now I'm going to place that top cutting plate just on the score line of my card, and I'll run this through my die cutting machine. This way, the die will only cut what's under the top cutting plate and not what's outside, giving us a partial die cut. But once I did my first card this way, I realized it will take me forever if I end up doing the partial die cutting for the rest of the 9 cards, and I decided to do it in a more simple way, and that's just by fuzzy cutting. So here I have rest of my 9 note cards, and I have already pre-cut these green cardstocks to layer the inside of my card and also the outside, and now I'm just going ahead and gluing these using some liquid glue. I have just used my scissors and free-handedly cut these to create the front hillside look, and once I glue this green cardstock on the front of my card, I'll keep that green cardstock as a guide and fuzzy cut the front of the card using my scissors. I thought this was the very fast and easy way to create that partial die cut look for the front of my card. But I understand that a lot of people are not comfortable fuzzy cutting. So for them, they can just go ahead and do the partial die cut using the dies, as I showed earlier. And this brings me to my first tip for this video. When you're creating your next bulk cards, try to give your card a different look by either creating a different shaped card or just, partial die cutting on the front or on the back. Just make it look a little different than usual note cards. Once all my note cards were ready, I kept them aside, and now I'm working on all the images. Today I'm going to use Memento Tuxedo black ink to stamp all my images, as I'm going to go ahead and Copic color all my images. So here I'm just quickly refilling my ink pad as it wasn't juicy enough. And I have a lot of images to stamp. And this brings me to my tip number 2. Always have a refill in hand for the ink pads that you love. Especially when you're creating cards in bulk and you know that you're going to stamp a lot of images. Usually I like to have a ink pad and a refill that's compatible with both alcohol markers and watercolors. And my favorite is the blackout ink from Ink on 3, but I actually ran out of the refill. Can you believe that? I have used that ink pad so much lately that I actually ran out of the refill too. Well, truth be told, I even dropped some, so yes, I did not run out really completely, but it was more my mistake where I just dropped the whole thing and lot of the ink was just spilled. Yeah, that happens in my craft room quite frequently. What to do? I am a messy crafter. So here I'm stamping the leaves from Lawn Fawn Critters in the Jungle stamp set on colored cardstock using my Memento Tuxedo black ink. And since I'm hand stamping these images, sometimes I don't get the complete impression of the image. So you'll see me using my Copic multi-liner to just go ahead and finish those images by hand drawing them. This wine image is also from the same Critters in the Jungle stamp set. Next, for my critters, I'm using the Slow Down and Enjoy stamp set from Lawn Fawn. And I'm stamping the sloth image from that stamp set on a craft cardstock. I'm stamping both the front and the back of the sloth from the same stamp set. Next, I'm stamping the bear image on grey cardstock. For the front of the bear, I'm using the stamp set Snow Much Fun from Lawn Fawn. And for the back body of the bear, I'm using the bear image from the stamp set Germ Free from Lawn Fawn. As I anticipated, both these bear images matched together, and all I had to do was wipe out the facial features of this bear and stamp it to get the back body of the bear. So once I ink up my stamp, I use my stamp chamois to wipe off the ink from the face, and then I just stamp it to get the body of the bear. Next, I also stamped the elephant image from the same Slow Down and Enjoy stamp set on this grey cardstock. And this brings me to my next tip, tip number 3. When you're creating cards in bulk, don't stamp your images on white cardstock. Instead, try to use colored cardstocks. That will help you color your images real quickly because you already will have a base layer to start with. And that will save you a lot of time. Lastly, I also stamped the sanitizer and mask image from Germ Free stamp set from Fawn. And I could have stamped these images too on colored cardstock, but I wasn't sure what color I wanted to use for these images. So I just stamped them directly on white cardstock. Now that all my images are stamped, I'm gonna go ahead and prepare them so that I can cut them using my scan and cut. I wanted a straight line between the arms of these animals, so I used my pencil to create a line connecting both the arms. I do have coordinating dies for few of these stamp sets, but I thought using scan and cut would be way faster. And thank God that I own a scan and cut because this would have been a lot of die cutting or fuzzy cutting for me. Here I'm first coloring these images before passing them through my scan and cut. These images are really teeny tiny and I thought it would be hard for me to hold them and color them. So I first colored them and then passed them through my scan and cut for die cutting. I did some very simple coloring here. I'm using BG11 to color the sanitizer bottle. I'm using C2 to color the sticker that's wrapped around the bottle. And I also used R24 to color the cross. And for the mask, I used BG13 and BG11 Copic markers. Once done coloring, I'm gluing this to my brother's scan and cut mat using some scotch tape. And I'll scan it on the machine and send it to direct cut to get all the die cutting done. Once I have all my images die cut, I'll start coloring the rest of the images. I'm starting coloring the sloth here. I'm using E39, E35 and E33 Copic markers for the sloth body. And for the lighter shade of the face, I used E31 Copic marker. I'm going to show you how I colored one of each of these critters and not going to bore you with all the coloring. So I colored the rest of the sloths off camera and now I'm coloring the elephant. I'm using some warm gray markers here. I'm using W7, W6, W3 and W1 Copic markers for the body of the elephant. I also used RV10 for the inside ears of the elephant. Adding some dot details to the elephant using the W7 marker here. Next, to color the bear, I'm again using the warm gray markers, but this time a little lighter in shade. So I'm using W4, W3 and W1 Copic markers along with RV10 to add blush to the cheeks and also to color the inside of the ears. And for the mouth part, I'm using W6 Copic marker. My invite also has these letters that I die cut using the Oliver's ABC's die from Fawn. So I die cut all these letters 10 times using some white cardstock. And here I'm using the Lucky Clover Distress Oxide ink and inking up the bottom of these letters to give them a little ombre effect. My card already has a lot of green on it, but I still chose to use this Lucky Clover ink, which is a green ink, to ink up these letters because it's such a bright and a happy green. And inking the letters just half and giving that nice white to green ombre effect brings a nice contrast. And that brings me to my tip number 4, that do not forget to use such bright and happy colors on your card and always try to give a good contrast if you're using similar kind of colors or similar shades of colors, so that you can add some nice interest to your cards. So once I'm done inking all my letters, I'll move on to assembling my cards. And to start with, I'll first assemble one card completely. So once I have all my elements ready to assemble my card, I'll first go ahead and assemble one card completely so that I know where all my pieces go, and then I can assemble all my cards together. And that is my tip number 5. Whenever you're creating cards in bulk, have one sample card ready so you know where all your pieces land on the card and you don't make a mistake. Till now, the design is in your head. So making a sample card just helps bringing that design live in front of you, and it's easier to assemble the rest of the cards. So here I have already glued the 3 critters to the front of my card with the backs glued to the inside. And that just looks so adorable, having those 3 critters hanging like that. Next I'm gluing the leafy vines and the leaves to the top of the card. And now I'm gluing all the letters to create the word. The inside says Myra is turning 2 and the outside would say you are invited. So here I'm just gluing the letters MYRA and I'm trying to glue them at an angle to match the front of the card. Once done, I'll just go ahead and trim off the excess using my scissors. Next I'm gluing the word invited to the bottom front of my card. I started with the letter I, which is the center letter, and then glued the rest of the letters near it. And this just helps me center my word properly on my card front. Next, to stamp UR on the front of the card, I'm using the stamp set Claire's ABCs from Fawn. Off camera, I lined up these letters together on my Misty door to create UR for the front of the card and is turning for the inside of my card. I used uppercase letters for the UR and lowercase letters for the is turning. This brings me to my 6th tip. If you have something to stamp repetitive on your cards, try to use a stamp positioner if you have one. This will help you have the perfect position of stamping every single time, and you will also be able to stamp the images couple times to get a crisp image. So my sample card is all done. I just glued the number 2 to the inside of my card and my first invite is ready. Now to create the rest of my invites, I'm first starting with stamping the sentiments. Since I already have my Misty out and my sentiments are all lined up, I thought it's the perfect time to first go ahead and stamp these sentiments. Once I'm done stamping the outside sentiment, I'll turn the Misty and then stamp the inside. And I'll keep stamping until I finish stamping the rest of the 9 cards. Once the stamping is done, all is left is to glue all these images and finish the invites. I'll start with first gluing all these leafy vines and the leaves to the top of the card. Once I'm done gluing the leaves and the vines to my cards, I'll go ahead and use YJ67 and add some shading to all these leaves. This just adds a little bit of depth to all these leaves and not make them look so flat. Next, I'll go ahead and glue all the letters and the number 2 to the inside of the card along with the animals, and that will finish all my invites. I hope you guys enjoyed this video and you got some tips and tricks for creating cards in bulk. If you did, don't forget to give this video a thumbs up and subscribe to my channel for more crafty videos. Here are a few more videos that you might like to watch. Thank you for visiting. Have a nice day.